Psalm chapter 16. We'll look at just a couple of verses in regards to this conversation on depression. We certainly understand that there are clinical factors, as have been mentioned, that causes depression. But depression is not always the result of perhaps chemical imbalances or other clinical issues. Sometimes there are situational factors that can contribute to a person finding him or herself depressed. At the same time, there are things that we can do to find a sense of joy, a sense of relief, a sense of confident assurance. Notice these words in Psalm 16. Preserve me, O God, for in thee do I put my trust. O my soul, thou hast said unto the Lord, Thou art my Lord, my goodness extendeth not to thee, but to the saints that are in the earth, and to the excellent in whom is all my delight. Their sorrow shall be multiplied that hasten after another God. Their drink offerings of blood will I not offer, nor take up their names into my lips. Let's look at what the psalmist David has in mind when he is speaking here. In very simplistic terms, David is saying that there is a certain joy and satisfaction that can only be found in God. David is trying to get us to understand that when we are in relationship with God, in fellowship with God, connected to God, there are assurances and confidence and joy and delight. Perhaps we need to be reminded that God created us to need Him, to worship Him. And no matter what we accomplish in life, no matter what we achieve, and no matter what we acquire, we will always find ourselves empty and find ourselves deficient of what we desire in terms of our joy and our satisfaction, because we have been created to worship and to need God. By the same token, he makes a contrast to those in verse number 4 who go after another God. When we think of going after another God, that doesn't have to be a graven image that a person bows down and worships. Another God can be indicative of a person who puts something, somebody, or some place in front of God. It may be their material things. It may be their job. It may be their family. Sometimes we make idols out of things that aren't necessarily idols in and of themselves. A good way to look at this is that anything you put before God can be, and in fact is, idolatry in and of itself. Nevertheless, the concern that David is mentioning is that no matter how much pleasure you may think you find in things, you'll always find yourself defeated. You'll always find yourself deficient. You always find yourself in sorrow because you have put your faith in something other than the God of heaven. Sorrows are multiplied by those who don't know God. What we must take from this is that while there are in our lives valleys and hurdles and challenges to get over, generally speaking, we can expect problems when we do not have a right relationship with God. And generally speaking, even in the midst of a valley, we can find joy when we're connected to God. If nothing else, we have the confident assurance that He's with us. He's the same God who says that He will never leave us nor forsake us. So do yourself a favor. Find a little joy in your life by finding yourself getting a little closer to God. Do yourself another favor. Don't allow yourself to deviate from God or put something in front of Him because you just might miss Him. This has been another installment of A Few Minutes with the Minister.